So that's what the cholesterol does. It actually inserts into the lipid fatty acids. And similar to omega-3, it keeps it fluid at lower temperatures because it's such a shorty. But interestingly, at higher temperatures, so at lower temperatures, it prevents the packing of the lipids and basically keeps it fluid. At higher temperatures, it actually prevents, too much fluidity. It makes it stiff. So it's extremely important molecule to stay within a range of 50 to 70% fluidity. Yeah, so long list here again. I can't repeat everything often enough. And I already talked about membrane stability now, and cholesterol synthesis is important for synthesis of all hormones. So I'll get to what happens when you remove cholesterol, but most people don't realize cholesterol is important to make your own vitamin D, and it's again very important for your brain function and digestion of fat and mitochondrial function. And that also plays a very important role in your immune function. So when you remove cholesterol, so there's, a lot of experiments, you can just take it out of experiments, artificial cell membranes or in cells or in tissue culture or in the whole body, these are the effects and their impact. So huge impact on membrane stability. You're over 90%, and you're blocking your vitamin D synthesis. You become hormone deficient. You're disrupting your cell signaling, especially in the brain. I mentioned the neurons can't communicate. And the cells simply die when you don't have cholesterol. That is a very interesting phenomenon, and it comes from mitochondria, which I talked about last week. And again, you need it to digest fat. So in the neurons, actually, it's important to have cholesterol for your neurotransmitter communication. And these vesicles, as you've seen in the synaptic gap, 100% require omega-3 and cholesterol. Otherwise, they can't fuse with the target synaptic receptors. And the membrane has to be extremely flexible and fluid, and the proteins involved in those docking processes are absolutely necessary. So you have a situation here where brain is actually one of the #1 focus, and dementia. So all these statin users have a much higher increased use of dementia. So how does that work? So in this experiment, basically they reduced cholesterol, and you can see there was a 44% decrease vesicle. So these little particles basically are the ones that are made in your neurons, and they need to be released and then taken back up on the other side. I don't have a picture of that, but you've seen it. And so 44% decrease is a giant effect here. So that's how you know that how important cholesterol is. And you have a also the vesicles get recycled instead of really doing their job. And yeah, so cholesterol, when you remove it, it basically can shut down your neurons. And DHA plays an important role in that as well. So the omega-3 is pivotal in the regulation of the cholesterol metabolism, also within the brain. And I was talking in my book also about this MFSD receptor and how that impacts lipid rafts and omega-3. So basically, DHA and cholesterol go together, and that impacts your brain neuron function, and it basically affects your lipid rafts. So this is important in developing the brain too, and we know that from our omega-3 tests, so that when babies are omega-3 deficient, and most mothers do not know, they may take or not take a prenatal omega-3, but we know that it's rancid. So that through the omega-3 deficiency, actually the cholesterol also becomes deficient and can't do its job. Yeah, so now the big question, right? It can be all read on my website, omega3health.us, is cholesterol dangerous or not, right? And I already told you that 40% of your cell's dry weight, up to 40% can be cholesterol. So it is extremely important. And you ask an average scientist or an MD, they don't even know these numbers. I had to actually dig them up myself. And that's all explained on my website. So is LDL bad? Is there a bad cholesterol? So no, there isn't. The big difference here is that, again, I showed you that LDLs, so low density particles, transport cholesterol to the cells, and that makes them so important in just getting the cholesterol there and making sure that it can do its job. And they don't have other functions, these LDLs, you'll see. And so they can't actually combat they can't actually combat the inflammation associated with all of the inflammasomes I talked about last week, which all results from omega-3 deficiency. And so that's why the LDLs are named, bad cholesterol, but I'll get to that. And so then they basically can cause these so-called foam cells. But it's just pure coincidence that LDLs show up in there because you have such massive amounts of cholesterol in your body. So I always say, you have a pile up on the freeway. What are you going to find in that? Massive amounts of cars, right? But it's not the car's fault, it's the driver's fault. And the driver needs to make sure that his cholesterol is adequate. So these total cholesterols we measure then are associated with LDLs, and we really need to look at very detailed analysis of what these LDL particles actually are. And we need to look at inflammatory markers. So when a high cholesterol is high, obviously your LDL is going to be high, because that's a normal process where you want to bring a lot of cholesterol to your peripheral cells. And it's simply, LDL plus HDL plus triglycerides. That's your, cholesterol value when they measure it in the blood. But it really doesn't mean anything. And I'll get to that, what would be a much more intelligent way of measuring this. Because you really actually need to look at the size of the LDLs, and you need to look at the actual oxidized LDLs in those foam cells. And you really need to look at inflammatory markers, especially CRP, ApoB, and TNF-alpha and IL-6. So LDLs themselves are just basically a coincidence. So this would be a real lipid panel. By the way, cholesterol isn't actually really a lipid. So it's a steroid, right? But we put it into the lipid panel. So it's not a correct terminology. But for all means, I'll get to another more detailed lipid panel. But you really want to measure fatty acids, and that's what we're doing, right, in our tests. Especially you might want to measure stearic acid, saturated fat, very important, and DHA and EPA. And you want to measure triglycerides in a different context. I'll get to that, and I talked about that already last week also. And so these are real lipids, phospholipids, sphingolipids. These are the actual lipids in your membrane that then contain, omega-6 or omega-3 and do their jobs. Yeah, and there are very sophisticated markers for LDL and oxidized bad cholesterol, but they're not measured. So really, you want to look at inflammatory markers, interleukins, TNF-alpha, and CRP, then you have a much better picture of what a real lipid panel actually means instead of just counting total cholesterol. So yeah, the impact of cholesterol, DHA, and lipids on Alzheimer's disease. I had several slides already about the impact of cholesterol on your brain function, which some people may have missed. So it's a huge problem, right? And our presidents are saying over and over, whatever, 20 years ago, 1 in 100,000 ADHD now, and 1 in 1,000. Why is that, right? And we know why, because of our inflammatory omega-6 intake and our very high index. And we have a projection here of Alzheimer's prevalence that is through the roof. More and more people will be in the area of dementia, and it's intricately linked with omega-3 and DHA. So we have definitely a situation here that needs to be addressed. And why is that? So once again, here I have a nice picture here of a pileup on the freeway. So this is your cholesterol, but it's really not the cholesterol's fault. It's just coincidence. It's the driver's fault. I hope that makes sense to you, but I'll get to the details of those numbers. So instead of just counting whole cholesterol, which also means high LDL, and LDL just brings cholesterol to the cells, we really need to look at inflammation, and we really need to look at which LDLs are oxidized. So the key factors in cardiovascular disease really are high triglycerides and a very, low omega-3 index. And we know that nobody tests with 8%. We have talked about that last week, that basically there's an exponential increase above 8-to-1 index, and very, very few people have 8% omega-3 in their membranes. Pretty much almost nobody that I know of personally. And this then reduces the inflammatory markers, and most of all, it's actually lowering your metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance. So just a reminder again, this is the reason for heart disease. Your cardiovascular state, the glycocalyx, is the lining of your arteries. And when you remove DHA omega-3, you basically destroy this. And then, which you can see here, all the green cells are dead when the DHA is oxidized. It's a vicious cycle. So less oxygen kills the mitochondria, which will then basically kill the glycocalyx, and you're going to get leaky gut. And this glycocalyx is extremely important in the health of our cardiovascular system. And it is the lining that keeps everything in check. Without cholesterol and omega-3, it will not be healthy. So I showed this last week, when this glycocalyx gets damaged, that's when you get your leaky gut. So the tight junctions between the epithelial cells in your gut or in your arterial cells start to leak, and then all this inflammation, this inflammasome, with your very high omega-6 index, basically leaks systemically into your blood and goes everywhere, causes leaky joints and leaky teeth, a lot of inflammatory processes in your head, leaky ears. So it's everywhere. For some people, it shows up in different areas in their body, but it is the root cause of arthritis. And you have a situation where your arteries are basically in a constant state of inflammation when the glycocalyx leaks, and all of this inflammatory process goes into your bloodstream. You would think it affects everything, your blood pressure regulation in your kidneys and your neural state in your brain. So all of this inflammation is controlled by omega-6, but you do need cholesterol to have an intact membrane, just as you need omega-3. So here's a summary of how omega-3 actually influences your cholesterol metabolism. So basically, the enzyme that makes cholesterol in your liver. So again, for all the people that are just coming in, and I will get back to the numbers probably one more time, but there's up to 40% of cholesterol in your body. How can it be dangerous, right? No, it's 100% necessary. And if your body doesn't intake it through fatty red meats, the only food that's really not inflammatory, then you have a situation where your liver needs to make it. And when your liver can't make it, or you're blocking it with statins, that is the enzyme that the statins block, you are in trouble. So the impact on the lipid rafts in your neuronal, in your brain function is directly linked, like I explained already earlier. All the cell signaling between the neurons is very important. Cholesterol and omega-3 DHA work together to basically form these lipid rafts. And we know these lipid rafts have been integrally involved in especially Parkinson's. So you can see how when these lipid rafts are degraded, that's a whole topic in itself. You will form all kinds of disturbed sections in your brain. Yeah, I have already mentioned it, that DHA together with cholesterol now is important to develop your nervous system, and how important that is for the baby, and how the baby basically removes the last DHA molecule from the mother in order to develop its own nervous system. But the actual expression of the genes involved in all of this is actually directly linked to omega-3 DHA. And the transport mechanisms in all of this, again, is linked to DHA. So all of this is published, and it's published for a long time. And we're going to get to the more fun part now, which is this is what we always been taught, is that high cholesterol means arterial sclerosis. But that is really not what we're learning now is true at all. It's just chronic LDL oxidation. So once again, LDLs need to be high, and I'll show you the numbers again, because they bring the cholesterol from the liver to the peripheral cells. And every single cell relies on this LDL function to deliver cholesterol to them. It cannot be made anywhere else. It's all coming from the liver, and that's what the LDLs do. And they have little receptors, APO receptors, on their vesicles, on these low density vesicles. And they then dock at their target cells, and then the cholesterol gets inserted into the cells. So when you have a cardiovascular event that I just mentioned earlier with the glycocalyx and the inflammasome, what are you going to find in there? You're going to find oxidized LDL. And why is that? Because the LDL has no protection against this inflammasome. HDLs are the ones that bring back the cholesterol from the cells to the liver. They actually have a very high anti-inflammatory function. They have more, how would you say, they have more luxury. So they contain different elements that can actually protect them from destruction and inflammation. And they contain more omega-3, which I will show in a second here. So, and these HDLs actually, so high HDL actually helps your LDLs not to become oxidized. But the culprit here really is that the LDLs have no protection against inflammation. And LDLs must be high, which I will show again in a second. And so it's just complete coincidence that you will find them in the artery plaques. So statins lower cholesterol by inhibiting a vital reaction in your liver. But that reaction in your liver is also a very, very important reaction to make vitamin D. So it turns out that statin users are vitamin D deficient, and they need to actually supplement more. But that's just a little sideshow here. I just really want to emphasize that cholesterol is so important that your liver has to make it, and it takes an enormous amount of energy to actually make cholesterol, and that is why you find vegans are extremely thin. There's no energy left over. So by all means, eat your cholesterol, and it still has to go through the liver and through the LDLs to get to your cells. So when you are vitamin D deficient, this goes kind of like back to what I talked about last week. We know that since COVID now, very good measurements when you are below about 30 nanomoles of vitamin D, your critical state of battling any infection, name it COVID, name it anything else, is decisive. So people don't supplement enough vitamin D. I talked about that. And especially if you're above the 36 latitude, you have to supplement. So then you basically end up with a high mortality. So very few people survive when they have less than 30 nanomoles of vitamin D. So our bodies are made to. So our bodies are made to basically have a very good impact on vitamin D levels, but only together with cholesterol. So the worst thing you can do is inhibit your cholesterol synthesis in your liver. So the effects of statins, which we've used now for over 30 years, are absolutely devastating. Basically, the list is long, and the side effects are long. And I don't really want to go into all of these details, but you basically, again, inhibit a vital reaction in your liver. And these isoprenoids, the function of them affects all cell growth, not just the synthesis in the liver. And that also affects immune system and the whole cytoskeleton, which is important for your DNA replication and everything. So statins reduce pro-inflammatory cytokines. That is a side effect. Okay, so that's probably why we get a very small effect on statins, and I will show you how big that effect really is. It's laughable. Yeah, but we know that statin users are very CoQ10 deficient, they're vitamin D deficient, and the general effect on the immune system is very, very strong. So here's the list of the main effects. So this goes into the area of mitochondrial function. When you're CoQ10 deficient, you also affect your aerobial mitochondrial function. And these processes are linked to direct cholesterol function in the mitochondria. So the root of it all, again, is, for the people who missed it earlier, is that your increased oxidative stress and inflammation is the root cause of, why we are always talking about bad cholesterol and oxidized LDLs. They also leak calcium. Calcium is the messenger peroxalones in every cell. And you are basically looking at the study that made statins famous. So this is your result. It's laughable. So I'll get to the absolute numbers here, but out of 18,000 participants, which isn't a lot, so I'll show you in a study with millions of participants, right? These are the effects. So this, I'm not kidding you, this is why people are taking statins for 30 years. There's no effect. You're talking about absolute minuscule differences here. So the famous Jupiter trial, and basically the NNT, which I'll get to, is a measure of how effective a drug is. So, when you have an NNT of 10, like in a antibiotic or something, so 1 in 10 people actually gets helped. So this number is extremely high for statins. It's 1 in 800, which comes out to basically preventing a heart attack in less than 3% of users. So I always say, you come to my office and I would tell you, you have a 2% chance of getting, your symptoms lowered and your health improved using Chinese medicine. Would you do it? So it's absolutely shocking that 30 years later, the numbers are 100% clear. There's no effect in lowering heart disease and stroke, but yet statins are still prescribed. So here again were the absolute numbers. So out of 17,800 participants, you have 109 fewer events in the statin group. So you really just have to let that self slide. It's crazy how we can take a very, very dangerous drug for 30 years based on 109 fewer events out of 17,800. So only 37 heart attacks were prevented, only 31 strokes were prevented. And in any cause mortality, the placebo had 198 and statins had 168. So there is no effect apart from a very small effect that statins reduce some of the omega-6 message. So this is a real study with 12 million Koreans. And a real study shows that your ideal cholesterol level. And again, for the people who missed it, up to 40% of your membranes can be cholesterol. All those numbers are described on my website, omega3health.us. So this curve is very, very surprising. We're told that 150 and below, the opposite is true. When you get below 150, your mortality rate goes up 2.5, 3 times. And this is not a small study. It's not a 17,000 study with an effect of 109 people. This is a very, very, very strong study. If you look at the plots, I actually replotted this here with the spline analysis, and you see that optimal levels are 210, 220. In women, arguably a little bit lower, but low cholesterol is very, very strong association with a higher mortality. And obviously, if you get to 300, you already have other metabolic syndrome problems. So that's when it goes up again. And we talk about that on another talk. But here's what was really shocking to me. So I actually asked ChatGPT to plot this data again from me, figure 3 from this 12 million people study. And he said you have the highest mortality at 220. So this is the first graph that he basically gave me. And I'm like, no, you plotted this the wrong way. This is the correct way. Unbelievable. So I asked ChatGPT, so how can you make a mistake like this? Because Chat doesn't make any mistakes. I've only caught it in 2 mistakes in 2 or 3 years. And this was the answer. So the narrative is so incredibly strong. You just read through this. This is his response. My initial instinct was to assume a linear relationship. And no, we see that that is not true. So this has been reinforced in all medical education. I call this brainwashing. And once again, that is the narrative. And even ChatGPT can't look through that out of a 12 million participant study. So, and all these studies obviously are suppressed, right? Because they want to sell their statins and based on 30 people. So once again, here, my summary here on good and bad cholesterol, and I'll get back to the omega-3 and cycle back through everything else here. So the LDLs deliver cholesterol to the cells from the liver, and they have no protection. So they cannot protect themselves from antioxidants in the inflammasome due to our high omega-6 index. And that's why they end up in this pileup called plaque. And you find oxidized LDLs in there. But due to the high amount of cholesterol that is needed for our bodies, that is pure coincidence. And LDLs in the HDL form actually bring back the cholesterol. That's how important cholesterol is. Your body needs to actually return it to recycle it to the liver. It's called reverse cholesterol transport, which is also very dependent on omega-3. And these cells actually, or particles, actually have an immune protection, and they do help even LDLs, plaques. So what's really actually the best lipid profile is their triglycerides, which end up in the VLDLs. And high triglycerides are directly linked to heart disease and not LDL. So you prevent the formation of harmful foam cells with higher HDL, okay? So HDL high is a good thing, and only then you can remove some of the foam cells. And these foam cells, there's many processes that basically try to remove them from the plaque, and omega-3 is very important in that process. But in the end, it's all about the inflammasome, which I talked about last week, and the very high omega-6 to 3 index. So all of that then is linked to your blood sugar, insulin level, of course, chronic stress. I talked about cortisol in the beginning and how cholesterol is important for that. And you can definitely lower cholesterol with just stress. Conditioning. We know that, and that's directly linked to the cortisol. So yeah, so LDLs contain a very low amount of omega-3, and that's why they can't protect themselves against this damage. And HDLs contain a much higher content, so do VLDLs. And omega-3 is anti-inflammatory, and it tries to reduce that very high omega-6 inflammatory message. And so these two are actually trying to help out the LDL, but they don't have that ability. So inherently, these foam cells are pure coincidence because LDLs don't have any anti-inflammatory message built in. So yeah, low omega-3 levels make LDLs actually prone to oxidation and plaques. That is the real cause, the root cause of it. And the LDLs, the HDLs actually protect endothelial function. So again, in a summary here, you want to have high HDLs, and that is actually very low, right? Overall in the high cholesterol, and you want to have high LDLs, at least in a moderate level. And when you get below 70, then you have trouble, and you basically increase your risk of dementia. As I showed earlier in my talk, for the people who missed it, there will be a recording, and how that all affects neuronal function. So the omega-3 index above 8 is critical. There's almost nobody who has an 8-to-1 index. Most people now have over 25-to-1 index, so the plot doesn't even go that far. When you have an omega-3 level of 8, you basically go down to almost no risk of cardiovascular disease. So you have a very, very high risk of heart disease, which I talked about last week. And that is kind of the area that everybody is in. So you can only reduce your cardiovascular risk by getting your omega-3 above 8%. Cholesterol does not play any role into that, which was summarized in this figure. So when you divide up just the population into quartiles, how much omega-3 they have, which the highest here isn't even, really 8%. It's more like 6.5%. The LDL, HDL, they play no role. There's absolutely no effect. Obviously, when your omega-3 goes down, your cholesterol goes down slightly, but the real root cause of cardiovascular disease is omega-3 and the inflammasome, which then oxidizes the LDLs, and so they have been named bad cholesterol for no good reason. Yeah, once again, statin users are vitamin D deficient, and we definitely need to measure our D levels, and that's also intricately related to omega-3 and vital liver functions. So once again, this is what be a really good real lipid panel, if they ever come up with one. A cholesterol above 220, even 300 may not be dangerous at all. And then you have to distinguish within the LDLs which ones are oxidized. And you can do that basically with different markers, ApoB and so on. So not all your LDLs are bad, only the ones that are oxidized. And again, they're oxidized because of your high inflammatory index. So you see here it's actually less than 30, and that's not very much. So yeah, you measure inflammatory markers that really matter, interleukin-6, TNF-alpha, CRP, homocysteine, and you could see here that those go down together with the omega-3. So as your inflammasome goes down, so go your inflammatory markers, but they're again not the root cause. They're just side players. They're downstream eicosanoids from omega-6. That's what they are. Yeah, so this would be a nice panel, but does the narrative call for this? No, it doesn't. Instead, the narrative calls for this, right? It's just unbelievable. I mean, you read this and you're like flabbergasted. This is reverse psychology at its best, right? So RFK is claiming that omega-6 is bad for you. Yes, it's bad for you. It's actually interesting. Marty, our new FDA head, the second thing he said in a talk was fat. They've been lying to us about fat for so long, 50, 60, 70 years. And this is what the narrative then spits out, together with a graph that's completely wrong, infiltrating chat. So if we are using chat now for our medical needs, we have to be extremely careful. What really does it regurgitate? This or the truth? Yeah, don't take statins, take omega-3 instead. Cholesterol is essential. Statins affect vitamin D levels. Mean cholesterol level should be around 220. And maintaining optimal cholesterol in D is the key level here for a healthy cell and a healthy mitochondria and a healthy synaptic function, healthy nerves, myelin sheaths, and so on and so on. The list is endless. So next time I will talk about our Xenogene product that basically contains fucoidins and curcumin, which basically affect the inflammasome in your gut. And they're extremely important antioxidants. And guess what? They're lowering oxidized LDL. So if you're worried and you have a very high index, unless you are taking balance oil for 1.5 to 2 years, you should definitely add this to your regimen. And we also know that curcumin is so anti-inflammatory in the gut, right? This is nothing new. So the whole topic about the microbiome and how omega-3 and cholesterol work together, and that is fascinating. Maybe a topic for another time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have almost the hours almost over.
Yeah.
And I wondered, I don't know if anyone who's in here is already with Cincino, because you mentioned omega-3, take omega-3. And we know there's a difference in omega-3s. And I think for the ones that do not know about it, it's very important for you to explain why not every omega-3 is good for our health.
Yeah, so from our tests, we know that there's pretty much only 3 to 5 products in the world that are not rancid. It's very shocking that the FDA could care less about measuring omega-3 in a rancid gel cap.
So why
That's
would
the
you
truth.
recommend omega-3 of Cincino?
Yeah, we stabilize our omega-3 with polyphenols, very good antioxidant on its own. And so that's the name of the game. You keep the omega-3 happy, and then you will be in the lowest quartile of heart disease. If you take rancid gel caps with no antioxidant in it, and once again, vitamin D, E are not antioxidants. They do not function to stabilize omega-3. That's the only step that you need to do is stabilize omega-3 right away after you purify the fish oil, which is done with fluorotannins in the fish. Then you have a very, very good chance of actually getting to 8% omega-3.
Wow,
That is
thank
the
you
name of the
so
game.
much. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. I think I understood a little bit of it. My English gets better. For everyone who is just, coming in here and not knowing so much about it, please go back to the person that sent you the link. For if you have any questions about the products, ask them and they will help you out. Well, thanks for joining tonight.
Anybody has any more questions about bad cholesterol? I know it's hard to digest that pill, isn't it? Even if
Hans,
chat can't digest it, huh?
Hans, I can only tell you, I was shocked that I saw in the last half a year, nearly half a year, two men, which have a cholesterol of 110 and 130, and I couldn't believe. And okay, the young man with 37, he has 110. And I said, I was shocked. And I said, that is incredible for his whole, total immune and hormone system. And he told this a new doctor, and they stopped straight away the statin because he has a heart attack with 34 when after
Wow.
the corona shot. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is an old client of me, and he has 136. And he said, it's everything okay. I take the statin, he take omega-3 and all the Cincino products. But he said his doctor is already totally satisfied with all his blood tests, and I saw really some things in the blood test from the doctor that is not very good and not have a good development for the future. I will see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
because when I learned medical technical assistant laboratory, I learned 200 plus age is normal
mm-hmm.
and not
150. Yeah.
low and
Yeah.
not down. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for this presentation. Yes.
Oh, somebody raised their hand.
Yeah, Hans, that's me. So the medical doctors really, I think they really believe, because they're educated, that they believe that a high cholesterol is really dangerous. So for me as a naturopath, or for my patients, I have always the question, what could you help me? What would be a good marker? So probably the homocysteine, or what would you say we could help our patients, because they're in between what the doctor says, or your cholesterol is so high, so you're going to die. And and the reality is exactly the opposite. So
It's
have it's ezetimibe, and now they have got they will present a new shot for which lowers the LDL to 50. A patient of mine told me, so that's unbelievable.
So, I mean, you really need to have this study handy, 12 million people. And again, you have to explain to people that these studies are suppressed, right?
Yeah.
And there's no arguing here. I mean, once you
Okay.
get below 150, your mortality rate goes up exponential. And there's some slight differences, and it's actually very interesting, the differences between men and women and younger and older. And you can probably really get to the bottom of that. But this study is, you know, rare, but it's 12 million people versus, you know, 17,000 people
Right.
with 37 less. So what I always tell people is, first of all, do you know why you're taking statins? And they say to lower cholesterol. I said, cholesterol is not a disease. It's not. You want to lower your chance of heart attack and stroke. So you can lower your chance of heart attack and stroke by maximum 3%.
Okay. So it's
that's what I tell
important
people.
to lower stress by whatever,
Yeah.
medicative, or probably even with microimmune therapy or other, or saffron or whatever. So then to take care of insulin resistance, so that they change their diet. And also insulin resistant is connected to stress, and to have a good omega-3 level with our built-in refrigerator so that it doesn't oxidize. Well, the polyphenol.
Refrigerator doesn't really help.
No, I explained to my patients that the polyphenols in the Zinsino omega-3 are some kind of a built-in refrigerator, so that the omega-3s are fresh and built in the body wherever the body needs it. So
Yeah.
you know, so that's a picture I have right now in the moment. So the question is how to explain it to the, you know, to the people who are not in the
So
topic.
again, you know, all you can do is tell people taking statins, which we've done now for 30 years, lowers your chance of heart attack by no more than 3% max.
Okay.
3%. So that means, you know, 3 out of 100 people have no heart attack. You know, where if 100 people get a heart attack, right? 3 taking statins don't have that heart attack. It's nothing, right?
It's nothing.
So it's the biggest lie ever fabricated by Big Pharma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we know that for 30 years now. So it's extremely important to explain to people that cholesterol is very, very important. That's why we have over 0.5 kilogram in our bodies, and that there is no bad cholesterol. It's pure coincidence.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's literally important, and you can't explain this to a doctor.
Unfortunately not.
No. But you know, you ask your doctor how many people get safe taking statins, they won't know the answer to that. So I mean, this is a 59% odds ratio. Okay, so your odds are lowered by 59%. Okay, this is what's so criminal about Western medicine, is that when you look at the real value, you know, you're saving 30 people out of 17,000, and all the side effects are worth that. It's basically a lie. So the odds ratio compares your risk to the placebo, which is, you know, not correct. So you lower your chance of heart attack by no more than 3%. That is the correct number. So in the publications, they talk about statins work 59%. It's a lie. It's not true. Yeah. Statistics is made up just to sell drugs.
Yep. Don't trust the statistic you didn't falsify yourself.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's not fun. I mean, I don't know what
It's
an
not fun.
easy,
No, it's really very sad.
I don't know what an easy way of changing the narrative is, other than
And that was the question why I asked. So what, because people sometimes there are many people who believe in lab values. So if I say to them, okay, do the homocysteine or whatever, you know, I will explain it to them, but it's always I'm here as a naturopath, and there's the doctor.
So, you know, again, I tell my people, ask your doctor what the NNT value of that statin is. Or ask him, you know, how much cholesterol is in your body. And ask them, you know, what your chance of heart attack is when you take statins. And that's basically all you can tell them. When they ask the real questions, they get to the answers, right? And the answer is our inflammatory index. Yeah, it's not fun, but we have to do it. Somebody has to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, Hans.
Yeah. So I would find it absolutely fascinating. You know, the whole statins for 30 years are based on this. It's just,
it's incredible. I mean, there's almost no
difference. Incredible. It's,
yeah.
You know, and this is not just statins, right? You name any drug, right? It's crazy how, you know, the statistics are falsified, or how you, they're just bent, you know?
It's big money.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you don't have any other questions about, you know, foam cells or cholesterol or omega-3, I can definitely.
I dropped in too late. I'm sorry. I always forget that you're switching to summertime earlier than. So that's.
Yeah, we can talk about this again.
The foam test, but probably we will talk about it next week again also.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah. The foam are the really bad guys.
So the foam cells again are just oxidized LDLs, and it's a very small subsection. So and we have to what they build their. This is what they build their narrative on. You're going to find oxidized LDL in the plaque because, you know, you need LDLs to bring cholesterol to the cells. It's extremely important, and they have no defense. They don't have any anti-inflammatory action. I don't know why the body didn't install it into them, but it didn't. Only HDLs, the returns, can do that. So it's complete coincidence, obviously, if you have an inflammasome and leaky gut and your glycocalyx is broken, you're going to form these plaques, and they're going to have LDLs in them that are then starting to oxidize, right? It's not the root cause of the problem. It's, again, you know, you have a pileup on the freeway. Where's my picture? I should put that everywhere. You have a pileup on the freeway. There you go. Right. You're going to find a bunch of cars in it, but it's not the car's fault. It's the driver's fault. Right. Yeah. I guess we have an hour late admittance here because of the time change. Yeah. I don't know why they do that to us. In any case, I'm still going to stick around if you have more questions. Otherwise,